Now that Title 42 has ended, the Biden administration is going to once again process all migrants who show up at the border the same way they have been processed before the pandemic. That means that authorities will use the normal immigration process as defined by Title 8 of the U.S. Code, which is much different than Title 42 of the U.S. Code. That was a public health act, and that's why first President Trump and then President Biden continued to turn people away on the grounds that it was a public health emergency. That emergency is over. We go back to Title 8.
Right. So you give the example of Title 8, right? It has much stricter penalties, such as enforcing 5 or 10-year bans on reentry for those who have been deported. And here to discuss is Senior Advisor for the Immigration and Border Policy Bipartisan Policy Center, Theresa Cardinal Brown. Theresa, we thought it would be great to have you on because a lot of people, they don't understand all the various titles, what they mean, and just the major differences. So let's just start there and lay it out. Biggest differences between Title 42 and Title 8.
So the title just refers to the section of the United States Code, which is how we codify every law that Congress passes. So Title 42 covers all of the laws that Congress has passed related to public health. And Title 8 covers all the laws that Congress has passed regarding immigration and naturalization. The Title 42 order, as we're talking about it, was a Center for Disease Control order published under its public health authority, Title 42, to deny entry to people or goods during a public health emergency. And so under this CDC order, which started in March of 2020 and was continued until today, it essentially was superseded our regular immigration laws. So it allowed our border officials to send back to Mexico or to their home country migrants who arrived without documentation, without processing them under immigration law at all. So these were called expulsions. Under Title 8, under immigration law, people who arrive without authorization and don't have another means to stay in the United States are deported. That's a formal process that has consequences, immigration consequences. If you're deported, you're not eligible to come back to the United States, as you mentioned, for at least 5 or 10 years. But more importantly, if you're deported and you come back, you could be criminally prosecuted with a felony charge of reentry. So there are more consequences. A Title 42 expulsion didn't carry any of those consequences. And so one of the things we saw was that many migrants would try over and over again to come to the United States while the Title 42 order was in place.
And now, thank you, that was very clear. There is this very considerable risk if you get caught coming into the country unlawfully, you get deported and you try and come back. It's not just we're going to send you back again under the law, and this is the law that was in place before the Title 42 public health emergency was declared. You can go to prison in the United States. So there's an effort to bring some order to the border. But I wonder, Title 42 was so controversial. It was during the pandemic. Why do you think that was? And look, do you think Title 8 is the right approach at this point for the country? Because this is a crisis, what is happening on the American border here.
Well, to your first question, Title 42 was controversial for a number of reasons, one of which was, even though it was issued as a public health authority, even from the early days, it was clearly being used to manage migration at the border. And there's been some news reporting that even officials at the Centers for Disease Control objected to issuing it under the public health authority. And frankly, in recent months, the fact that it was tied to public health was less and less relevant as most of us have gone back to relatively normal lives in a post-COVID environment. So the fact that it was primarily being used to manage migration and not about public health became more clear. The other reason it was controversial is that many of the migrants who were expelled back to countries in very, very bad circumstances. You think of Haiti, which is essentially a failed state, and people were sent back to Haiti where basically gangs run the country. Others may have been sent back to their home countries where they were facing persecution and they didn't have a chance to apply for protection, and so some people were murdered. Even those that were sent back to Mexico faced rampant crime from gangs, from cartels, even from corrupt government officials in Mexico. So they suffered extortions and kidnappings, assaults, even sexual violence there. So those were some of the reasons that the Title 42 order was controversial. And I think the issue about going back to Title 8 in part is that our current immigration authorities for managing migration at the border were passed more than 2 decades ago, at a time when 90+% of everybody who was encountered was Mexican. They weren't trying to ask for asylum, which many of the people coming in now are, and they could be sent back to Mexico relatively quickly. So there's an increasing mismatch between our existing immigration law and what it says we can do with people who arrive at the border and ask for asylum, and the fact that more and more people are asking for asylum. In fact, most of the majority of people you're seeing in those pictures want to ask for asylum in the United States. A lot of them will not qualify for asylum. They just don't understand the rules, but they have the right to ask for it under our current immigration laws. And I think that's one of the concerns, is that our system just doesn't have the capacity to process that many for asylum and have any timely adjudication on those decisions right now.
Now there's talk that what we're going to see at the border towns on the border is going to be historic, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more with you about this. We hope you'll continue to work with us, Theresa, on more interviews and context as we move forward.
Certainly.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.